Over the last 30 to 40 years, we've been witnessing an absolutely unique phenomena. The People's Republic of China, whatever you think about it, and I'm not really here neither to condemn nor to endorse anything about it, but if you have eyes to see, you will see economic development achieving things nobody thought were possible. Nobody understood in those days what the Chinese were doing. And in those days, it was only the beginning, and you could be excused for not paying all that much attention. They were one of many very poor countries in the world who were trying to stop being poor countries in the world. Americans might have read the novel by Pearl Buck, The Good Earth. If you ever did read that book, we had to in high school. Well, you learned what the poverty was like. It was, for a suburban kid like me, it was hard to get my head around what that kind of poverty is like. In the last 30 to 40 years, the Chinese achieved a level of economic development that took several centuries in Western Europe. And it took a good century and a half, counting conservatively, here in the United States. We've never seen anything like it. What the Chinese did was to mobilize, borrow from the rest of the world, no question, but put all that together in a successful mix. If your measuring rod is economic growth, lifting people out of poverty, and let's remember, 1.4 billion people, 4 to 5 times the population of the United States. They were able to do it. Not only that, they now compete with the United States at the highest levels of technology. What we get from Intel or Apple, they have their equivalent. And in some cases, they're already ahead of us.
A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching us from. This is Awakened Africa and I'm your host, Bemo. So, all of you are going to agree with me that China's remarkable economic growth over the past few decades has positioned itself as a worthy competitor to the US, particularly in technology and electrical vehicles, right? Trying to become a superpower. The US tariffs on Chinese products are seen as self-defeating, isolating America while allowing China to thrive. The Chinese model blends private enterprise with state-directed goals, prioritizing broader social objectives. Right. I'm saying this because I bumped into a video by this economist and industrialist Richard Wolff again, and I want us to watch that video. Let us digest whatever he's saying, and then I'll come back to break down each and everything. Let us brainstorm together, have a conversation in the comment section. But is it true that America is going down the trenches? Are these signs that America is going to fall off? This is Awakened Africa. You're new with this channel, you do the needful. Let us be a community, let us be brothers, let us have this togetherness. Subscribe. If you're a returning subscriber, like, comment, and share. Is Awakened Africa. Let us watch the video.
Over the last 30 to 40 years, we've been witnessing an absolutely unique phenomena. The People's Republic of China, whatever you think about it, and I'm not really here neither to condemn nor to endorse anything about it, but if you have eyes to see, you will see economic development achieving things nobody thought were possible. Nobody understood in those days what the Chinese were doing. And in those days, it was only the beginning, and you could be excused for not paying all that much attention. They were one of many very poor countries in the world who were trying to stop being poor countries in the world. Americans might have read the novel by Pearl Buck, The Good Earth. If you ever did read that book, we had to in high school. Well, you learned what the poverty was like. It was, for a suburban kid like me, it was hard to get my head around what that kind of poverty is like. In the last 30 to 40 years, the Chinese achieved a level of economic development that took several centuries in Western Europe. And it took a good century and a half, counting conservatively, here in the United States. We've never seen anything like it. What the Chinese did was to mobilize, borrow from the rest of the world, no question, but put all that together in a successful mix. If your measuring rod is economic growth, lifting people out of poverty. And let's remember, 1.4 billion people, 4 to 5 times the population of the United States. They were able to do it. Not only that, they now compete with the United States at the highest levels of technology. What we get from Intel or Apple, they have their equivalent. And in some cases, they're already ahead of us. I'll give you an example. 10 or 15 years ago, every major car-producing company in the world undertook a program to develop the electric car, the electric vehicle, to replace the fossil fuel burning oil and gas vehicle. And we have many examples of that being produced. However, one example outranks everybody else. The electric cars of China are better and cheaper than anybody else's. They won the competition. That happens all the time. Other companies in other countries at other times won equivalent competitions. The response of the United States has been to impose a tariff to make the better, cheaper electric car from China unaffordable. The current rate of tariff applied by the Biden government is 100%. So, for example, if the electric car from China costs you $30,000 that have to be sent to China to pay for the car, you've got to give them to the car dealer $30,000 to pay off the Chinese, and another $30,000, 100%, goes to Uncle Sam, so that the cost to an American would be $60,000 for that $30,000 car. Okay? There are no electric cars from China on the road in the United States. A quarter of the electric cars on the road in Europe are the Chinese cars. The greatest producer, the most successful, the most rapidly growing car company in the world, most Americans have never heard of. It has 3 initials, B as in boy, Y, and D as in dog, BYD Corporation. The response of the United States is to freeze them out. This is self-defeating and, to be an economist for a moment, stupid. Why? Everywhere else in the world, as the transition to electric vehicles is underway, every competitor of the United States across all industries will be able to buy the best car at $30,000 with which to compete with the American company, whereas the American company is going to have to pay more than $30,000 for the non-tariff equivalent, which will cost you $40,000 to $50,000 for an inferior vehicle. When I went to school and they taught me economics, this is somewhere between self-defeating and stupid, and a little bit of both. When I got my PhD in economics at Yale years ago, my classmate was a woman. I remember her because she was unusual. Her name was Janet Yellen. Okay, she's now the Secretary of the Treasury in the United States government. I know that she knows it's self-defeating. She knows it's stupid. She's out there advocating it because that's the position of the government. The United States is losing the competition with China. This is a self-defeating behavior, typically of somebody who's desperate. Instead of outcompeting the Chinese, coming up with a plan to try at least to do that, you are, lifting up the barriers. They tell themselves in Washington that they're isolating the Chinese. They're not. They're isolating themselves. The rest of the world looking at the United States and they see an empire going down and they get the pleasure that comes from that. And we ought to wake up as a nation and figure this out. Every part of the poor world, and the poor world is the vast majority of Asia, Africa, Latin America, for sure, plus large parts of North America and Europe too. They all wanted 40 years ago to do something, but the Chinese actually did it. That's the question that has to be asked. Did they build on what went before? Absolutely. Absolutely they did. The Chinese, for example, and this is misrepresented in the West, again, for defensive reasons. People say that Chinese built on the West's technology. That's true. Of course that's true. But the Chinese didn't do that in any mysterious way. 25 years ago, they made a decision that they would say to the developed world, whom they hoped to imitate, the United States, Western Europe, Japan, and so on, we will give you a deal. We understand you're capitalists. We understand that profit is the bottom line, blah, blah, blah. And here's what we're going to give you. Two things. Number one, an educated, disciplined, incredibly cheap labor force. And number two, the biggest growing market in the world. In a business school, we tell budding young entrepreneurs, if you want to know where to go and focus your energy, go where the labor is cheap and the market is growing. Okay, they went to China. And they went because they did exactly what we told them to do. They made a ton of money. That forced all of those who were not yet ready to do that to realize if you don't go to China too, these guys are going to outcompete you. They're going to bring that stuff back, made with cheaper labor, and they have their own, the Chinese market. You know, General Motors now sells more cars in China than it does in the United States. These are the developments, and everybody wanted to do it, but the Chinese did it. And the whole organization called the BRICS is an organization that is internationalizing the Chinese model. And that too ought to worry the United States a great deal more than it currently does. The 20th century bequeaths to us, let's call it the Anglo-American, mostly private economic system, private enterprise, private capitalist, profiting, all of that, and bequeaths to the Soviet Union. The attempt as an alternative to build it with government-owned and operated enterprises, at least in the industrial sector, not so much in agriculture, but there too, let's call them, for lack of better, a polar opposite. Then it's not surprising, given how human beings work, that along would come a group of people who have something they don't like about the first one and something they don't like about the second one. And so they conceive the idea, would we get from a hybrid something that would capture the best of the one, the best of the other, and get rid of, discard the parts of both of them that we don't like? You could, I think, make a very good case that that's what Mao Zedong, the Chinese Communist Party, that's what they are. People forget, but they shouldn't, that in the 1960s, Soviet Union and their proteges in China came to war with one another. They did not agree on things that would make them shoot at each other's people and hurt each other. I mean, the divisions were very profound. So no one should be surprised that the Chinese made the decision to welcome foreign enterprise. Bring us your technology because you are ahead of us in a dozen ways, which they said. If you read Chinese journals, they've been full of that for years. Much of what those Chinese journals did was to take from the United States and try to figure out how to do the same thing a little bit better. But 90% of what they did was learn from the United States, and they paid for that in all the ways they normally. Nobody stole the that's childish. Nobody put a gun to the heads of the American companies that went over and made the deal. We will give you our technology. We will show it to you. We'll teach it to you. You got to give us the labor. You got to give us access to the market. We're getting profit out of it. You're getting technology. That was the deal. That was a deal on the table, crystal clear. To represent it now is really cheating. It's like my saying, I'm going to give you $5. You give me your shirt and we make the exchange. You have my $5. I got your shirt. And then I start screaming, he stole my shirt. No, stop. You didn't steal my shirt. We had a deal. You may have changed your mind. You may regret it. That's another matter. But nobody stole anything from you. And the Chinese, they resent that because for them, that's the 100 years of humiliation again. Because what they hear is the subtext. You're too stupid. You're too backward. You're too Chinese to figure these things out. And so you must have stolen it. You couldn't have done it without, we are the center. And I know where it comes from. For a good long while, the United States was the center of innovation, was the great breakthrough technology. Silicon Valley deserves part of the reputation it has. I get that. But so do the achievements on the basis of that. And if you're honest about Silicon Valley, you'll know that a lot of what they did there was also borrowing things that had been developed elsewhere in the world, as it has always been. If you have a society that arises on the decay of another one of the things that often happens is a kind of, for lack of a better term, chauvinism. That is, the winner in the game rewrites the history. And in that history, their own people, their own communities are the dynamic, are the breakthrough, are the, and the achievements of others are second rate or they're downplayed. And then it's not a big step until they're forgotten altogether. For me, the example is baseball. When I was young, I was in love with American baseball. And I was in love with a sport that I understood was white. And I remember occurring to me, why are there no black people in the baseball? And the answer was, they don't do that, or they can't do that. I was around early enough that I remember the importance of Jackie Robinson as the breakthrough black player. Nowadays, we understand that black people, to be as mild about it as I can, are very good at sports and are very important in our professional sports, like overwhelmingly so. And that they were, now you get the idea, they were not out of the game because of their athletic skills. There were other reasons. And the same thing I think applies here. If your economy is based in a certain way of making decisions, then your civilization rises and falls on that basis. The collapse of the Chinese empires of the past were that they were built on, to use the language of economics, a feudal class structure, a class structure of lords and serfs, like what we had in Europe, in the 1,000 years between the end of Rome and the Renaissance, or however you want to date it, it doesn't matter. But that system, which enabled European feudal society to achieve remarkable things, also was the seeds of their own downfall. And why do I say that? Because it's directly applicable to what's the China story. China wants to cash in on all the achievements of private capitalism, which are significant, modern industrialization, all of that. But they are also aware, partly because of their ideology, that what can carry you forward can also drag you down. And you've got to be careful to understand that possibility, to be alert for it, and not to miss it when it comes. And here's how it aimed to the United States and China. We innovate in this country insofar and when it is profitable to somebody to develop it. Somebody sees, I can make a ton of money doing it this way or this new way. We celebrate that, we are proud of it, and it achieved a lot. I'm the last one to deny it. I teach that material to my students. What did the Chinese do? They said, yes, but if you make that the key, if the only innovation program you undertake is the one that is privately profitable, you are going to miss opportunities, you are going to underfund opportunities, and it's going to drag you down. We in China, this is how they explain it. We in China say, half the economy, you do that private profit-driven technological, do it, and we'll let you become millionaire. After the United States, China is the second country in terms of the number of private millionaires and billionaires that they have. So they've allowed that to happen. But in the other half of the economy, we're not doing that. We're going to make decisions about economic development, including technological change, based on the social objectives the Communist Party and its government define. So, for example, we want to be ahead of the United States in certain new areas. We didn't have private enterprise to undertake it. Who cares? We'll do it. Maybe the private will catch on later and they'll do it. Okay, then we'll do something else. But as long as we're going to make decisions, and there's the solution. They are able to say, we're going to invest in things that Americans don't. Is it because Americans can't? No. Do we lack the technology? No. Do we have the scientists who can do it? Yes. But we have an economic system that is so set up that those opportunities that aren't now privately profitable get the short end of the stick. They're not never there, but they are the ones that we dream about, but we don't invest in. They don't do that. When they talk, they say, is profit important to us? Yes. Is it the beginning and the end of the conversation? Oh, no, not the bottom line. It is one among a set of objectives, and our strategy is focused on all those objectives, not the prioritization of private profit. By the way, that's what they mean when they say socialism. That's what they mean.
Right, good people, welcome back to the channel. And allow me to say this, and I think everyone has observed this trend. And it's true that China has experienced an unprecedented economic development over the past 30 to 40 years, and it has really surpassed the Western nations in various sectors. This transformation involved mobilizing resources and competing at high technological levels, right? And it is true to say that the rapid economic growth in China has lifted millions out of poverty, right? Showcasing a remarkable achievement in a relatively short time frame compared to historical developments in Western countries. For just a short period of time. I think the Asian countries, right in the Far East, and these people have a secret that they don't share with Africa or the rest of the Western countries, but I think they are so smart. For instance, China's electric vehicles have emerged as superior and more affordable alternatives in the global market, reflecting their advanced technology and strong competition against traditional auto manufacturers. Right? Come to Africa and you'll find out most of the electronics, electronic gadgets, most of these appliances used here, and it's to say that most of them come from China. There are so many countries in Africa that have this Sino-Africa, Sino-Africa, Sino-Africa. You go to Kenya, you find Sino-Africa. You go to Namibia, you find Sino-Africa. You go to South Africa, you find Sino-Africa. Rwanda, Burundi, and the rest of the 54 countries in Africa. Everyone has a relationship with China. And China are not donors. China are lenders. They're going to give you money, but they won't give it to you directly. They'll come there, build those roads, bridges, they'll fund your schools, they bring computers to your schools, they bring those electronic machines, medical machines into your hospitals, which are really advanced. And this is a smart move compared to the Western countries who just give donor funds, right? So on the electric vehicles, I found out that the United States had imposed tariffs on Chinese electric cars, making it difficult for American consumers to access these innovative vehicles, which will hinder domestic competitiveness. So, like, they don't know that. You can say that America, they fear they fear competition, right? The United States is currently struggling in its economic competition with China, demonstrating behavior that is both self-defeating and counterproductive. This situation raises concern about America's global standing and economic strategy. By the way, their economic strategies are kind of being sabotaged by China. I've mentioned it earlier. If you've been keen enough, you got that point earlier. The US is isolating itself instead of the China, while it could have long-term negative implications for its economic and global influence. This self-isolation is often misunderstood by policymakers. You know, if you want to make it, you need to be a good team player, right? Learn from this part. Let US learn from China and let China learn from US. But if you're going to be having this behavior like, oh, you've created a product that's a product that is so competitive than ours, meaning that when you bring our product into our country, it's going to pose a competition and our local manufactured products are not going to sell. For instance, the electric cars. And in terms of air and technology, China is really running so fast. Just the other day, they released DeepSeek. They have Huawei, right? Their social media platform TikTok has swept the masses. They have Reddit has swept the masses. But when you come back to the other hand of US, their Instagram is falling off. Their Facebook is, even though it is the most used social media platform, but it is slowly losing its glory, right? So China's successful economic strategy involved offering cheap disciplined labor force and a rapidly growing market, attracting foreign investments and businesses, where this strategy has outperformed US economic policies. For instance, the rise of international organizations like BRICS promoting China economic model. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa, right? It is promoting the Chinese economic model, which poses a significant challenge to the traditional Western economic systems. This shift in influence could reshape global economics. Yeah, that's very true. So, China's approach to technology transfer emphasizes collaboration with foreign enterprises, allowing them to gain essential knowledge and skills. Yeah. So let us all remember that the relationship between China and the Soviet Union in the 1960s was marked by significant ideological differences leading to profound divisions. This historical backdrop shaped China's later decisions, right? So let us all remember that whatever China is doing, it is so smart. China, whatever is doing is so smart. And I'd urge the policymakers in US to try and learn from China, because China is on its way to becoming a superpower. Whatever China is doing, so many people will not believe. So many people will not believe. The distinction between non-profit-driven innovation and broader social objectives reveals a fundamental difference in economic philosophies between the United States and China. Understanding this difference is vital for global economic dynamics. It is true to say that, with the words of economist Richard Wolff, America is slowly losing its glory. That's true. This is Awakened Africa. If you're new to this channel, kindly consider subscribing. If you're a returning subscriber, kindly like, comment, and share. I'm your host, Ben. Peace out.